introduce our third speaker, Francesca Bettio from University of Siena. Yes, I will do that. Are you okay? So, her studies range from long-term and cyclical patterns of female employment and wage differentials to discrimination and occupational segregation, fertility in Mediterranean countries, inter-household bargaining, care work, and sex work. And she has collaborated with the European Commission as an expert of female employment and as a consultant for local Italian governments in equal opportunity projects and initiatives. So please.
Hi. Despite all these high-sounding things I've done, I feel a bit of a foreign here because I think I'm the only economist. And of course, my difference is evident from the fact that I'm showing slides for the first time, so bear with me, please. I may be slightly different. I have, however, played with history, and I say play. And I think this is one of the reasons why I'm here. Because in my first book, I used history somewhat heavily to document what was almost undocumented at that time, meaning the position and the trends in women's labours and wages. So I'm going to rely on what I did in the past and somewhat other work that I've done more recently. But since what I've done compared to an historian is so thin, then I decided that instead of giving details, I give you big questions and very tentative answers, right? So what are the big questions? Well, the questions are, start from the bottom. Well, first of all, but no, start from the top in this case. Is there something special about women's wages? I was asked to talk about wages, not female employment, during post-war transition. And then, are there lessons to be learned? I will, as I said, focus, but really very briefly, so forgive me for that, on 3 transitions, of which I know a little bit. And that is the first one, after First World War II, and then after the Second War. And then I'll also focus on the post-transition years that this project has focused on in neighboring countries, meaning the 90s. And I will use each of them to illustrate a point, which is, however, I think, a bit speculative. Now, in order to see the points I'm going to make, I'm going to start with some information that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but just in case. And I'm giving an optimistic picture as compared to what has gone on so far. So, a change of climate, right? And that is the following. If you consider the issue of equal pay and the position of Italy vis-à-vis other countries, and if you look at the statistics, Italy is the European champion, meaning the best, not the worst. Now, in figures, if you measure the difference in hourly wages between women and men in Italy at the moment, across the economy, the difference is about 5%. Now, the European average is 16%. There are many ways to measure this difference. This is one. I'm not going into details. If you want to ask me, we'll have to. So that's the point I'm starting from. And my whole point is that all these 3 transitions, in a way, contributed to this, quote, favorable position of Italy in different ways, right? And with different strengths. And that's what I'm going to elaborate on. Well, first of all, a qualification. When I said Italy is a champion, It is the champion for good and for bad reasons. I'm not going to talk about the bad reasons. I'm only going to talk about the good reasons, even when I will consider those transitions, right? So let's look at the first transition, what happened. Well, the first transition, I really focused on the first 5 years, well, 7 years, 10 years after World War I. And as you know, this was a period of crisis, right? What happens in a crisis? In those periods, you can read the slides, of course, but I'll summarize. In those periods, there was huge inflation. It slashed, right? When there is such a huge inflation, and wage in real terms go to the bottom, what happened is that almost, how could I say, by survival of the system, those who are least well paid, in a way, do better. They must do, because otherwise they wouldn't survive. So whatever action is taken by the state or by the union is to protect, especially the lowest paid. And that's exactly what happened in that period. In particular, women were about 2/3 of them. I'm talking about the official economy. I'm not talking about the underground economy, right? Because I don't have data on that. And 2/3 of women were in textile. Now there is evidence to that period that textile, soon after World War I, and as a result, or rather as a response to inflation, blah, 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 got some of the highest paid rights. And there is evidence that across the sector, those who got the highest paid rights were the least paid. Of course, this favored women. Was it important? I'm not able to say it was very important because I don't have many data. I have very limited information. And as I said, I'm not a historian, so I will go back to the source. But based on what I found in those days, at least, my estimate was that this alone produced an increase, an inflated increase of 2-3 percentage points on relative pay for women, meaning women in those days earned between 40 and 50% of what men earned. An optimistic figure is about 50%, right? And that particular period meant an increase of 3, 4, 2 percentage points, a few percentage points, okay? So that's the first transition. So remember, the improvement was what I would call a collateral effect of a crisis, okay? Not particularly wanted, not particularly sought for, except to defend the lowest paid, men and women, and of course, as women are at the bottom, they get the best. Then, second transition. Here, things are different. And as the previous speaker said, what characterizes the second transition is, in particular, the role that unions played. Now, there wasn't a lot of change in the structure of collective bargaining, but there were a few changes that were fundamental. And one in particular, for the bad and good reason again, was link between union and political parties. And this link favored a great coordination. We all know in Italy that, there were the 3 sort of confederation that united, right? And there was like a cupola, a top layer of these 3 confederations that decreed or legislated about some basic things about the collective bargaining. And all that was highly beneficial to women. Not that it was necessarily sought for, although there was a strategy of equal equality, but it was highly beneficial to women for sought for and for unsought for indirect reason. For example, one reason was all the wage scales were unified across regions, right? So that this limited wage dispersion. When you limit wage dispersion, you favor women, because they are at the bottom, usually, right? Then there was a specific clause that was part of unions' strategy for income equality, and that was a 30% ceilings on gender differential was established in 45 and 46, and then was further reduced over the years until it was, until in 1960, what happened was that women and men were graded separately, right? The separate grading was abolished, although, of course, this didn't guarantee equality at all, because women were always on the bottom of their scale, and that remained, and we know that. However, when you judge that, be aware that Italy was not so different from other countries, and maybe in certain respects it was even better. So, I mean, it's not, it was common in those days, so to speak. So that too, that period too of transition, because transition favored change in institutions, and particularly in the collective bargaining institution, that was beneficial to women. And that had a strong impact. Now, I'll show you briefly, and that's why, and then I'll go back to the slide. You can see here, very briefly, these are actually official figures, not fully comparable, so don't blame me on that, but I tried to put them together nevertheless, on what was women's relative wages with respect to men. And as you can see, we start from 61, so by that time we had already reached 60%, as compared to 50% that I talked about in the first experience, blah, blah, blah. So that percentage point, on average, is not a little thing. It's already progress, right? And then, as you can see, by about 65, we had already gone up to 67 or so. And then there is a big jump. And it reaches 86 in about early 80s. What is this big jump? This has nothing to do with transition. But again, it has to do with one of the mechanisms that I talked about that concern transition, meaning in that period there was double-digit inflation. What was done? A flat indexation rate. The flat indexation rate completely changed the structure of wages in Italy, favoring the bottom. Women were favored. Okay? Then you see that it goes down somehow. Why? Because the flat indexation rate was removed because it was actually producing inflation, right? It is the famous Accordo di San Valentino, the Italians know it very well, and therefore relativity's wage for women decreased a bit. But, as you can see, and that is the last part of the graph here, okay, right? The wage for women relative to men picked up again somewhat in the 90s and continued rise. And that's when we come to the present period. And as I started by saying that Italy is the champion, nowadays we are 5%, right? So the rise continued, right? So the third thing I want to say, and the last, is one of the factors that may, I underline may, explain the fact that despite the fact that inflation ceased and the indexation was removed, well, female wages suffered, but not that much. Then they picked up again. One of the reason behind that, just one of the reasons, there are many, may have been the legislation that was passed in the 90s. There was in particular one law that I would like to comment because it is particularly, I think, interesting in view of what is discussing today. In several countries, Ireland, Finland, whatever, they are, I don't know if you heard, trying to implement equal pay by law, right? And one of our parties, the Democratic parties, announced this as part of the future program. Will it work? Well, what happened in the 90s has some lesson to teach about that. And I don't think that a particular law, which was called 125, and it was similar to the laws that are being implemented today, ostensibly to guarantee equal pay. Well, that law didn't work at all in terms of effectiveness of the provision. However, it might have worked indirectly because a law establishes a moral, how can you say, atmosphere, you say, or narrative, or whatever, raises awareness by the whole population that, you know, women are not equally paid, as most of the people believe it being the case, and puts indirect pressures on firms. So, my last word, have I got half a minute? Half a minute, is when improvement is due to collateral effect of the crisis, it may work, it may not work. It has worked in the case of Italy, but as you can see in the 80s, where again the same thing happened, right? The risk was that female wages would turn back again because once you remove the crisis and the response to the crisis, then things revert to normal and it may not work. In the case of Italy, it has worked. Possibly because Italy had 3 big waves of inflation and that somehow determines the history of female wages. What certainly has a more lasting effect is the change in the bargaining rules. Those work, and those tend to stay. As to the effect of the law, it depends. I mean, I'm not saying the laws that guarantee, you know, equal rights for women, that's a different. The laws that try to establish, somehow to enforce equal pay through legislation. And we can talk about it in the discussion too, you know, because you need the details to understand what's happening. Well, those kind of laws normally don't work because wages are established by firms, enterprises, many forces, etc., etc. But as I said, they may work indirectly because they remind public opinion that equality has not been achieved, there is something wrong with it, something must be done, and so indirectly they may discipline firms. Thank you.